Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio podcast and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Myrna Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Dr. Peter Rios. Dr. Rios and I are going to be talking on the topic how to maximize your life. How many of you know that if you're not maximizing, if you're not growing, then you're dying, right? So that's what we're going to talk about today, how to get the most out of your life. Welcome, Dr. Rios.
Hi, Myrna. How are you? So excited to be here with you and your amazing listeners.
All right. Well, I'm so excited to have this conversation with you as well. All right, guys. So let me give you a brief introduction. Peter Rios, PhD, is a renowned bilingual speaker, organizational consultant, and leadership coach with over 20 years of leadership development experience across multiple industries. Peter has consulted at institutions such as Harvard University, the Lilly Endowment, and the Department of Veteran Affairs. He has been a lecturer at Penn State, Colorado State, and the Pacific School of Religion at Berkeley. His passion for leadership and personal development and organizational change stems from his transformational experience after overcoming trauma at an early age and embarking on an unprecedented journey of healing, self-discovery, and professional development. Peter's on a mission, along with his spouse, Dr. Ruby Gonzalez Rios, to build and develop people so they can maximize their potential and live healthy, fulfilled lives. That's the promise of this show today, is to help you to do that. So, Peter, the first question I want to ask you is a bit of a background to set the table. What was the mindset shift for you to go from failing community college? I know it wasn't in your bio, but I read that somewhere. Failing community college 3 times to now holding 2 doctoral degrees. What was the trauma you had to overcome in order to accomplish that great feat?
Well, thank you. Thank you again for having me. That is a good question. I believe that for me, it was coming to a place of honesty and vulnerability with myself. Like what I had been doing was not working. However, at times we just continue to do things because we have a routine, because that's what we're used to, that's what we're accustomed to. Maybe that's what our culture or our immediate surroundings has told us we can do. And so I was living a life, a mediocre life, a life below my potential, which now drives me crazy when I see people like that because I'm like, listen, we have to help you and let's move. And to be honest and fair with the listeners, I went through a lot. I went through a lot. I tried identity crisis, right? Um, and also, my grandmother raised me, and so my mom and dad were not around. So, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? What am I called to? All of these things, wrestling with these real life questions. And finally, I came to a place where, we've heard it before, this the old saying of I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I said, I have to do something. And I had this epiphany or this encounter where, I could see myself doing more, being more, and experiencing more, and then eventually helping others. And so I went from, yes, failing out of community college several times because I just was not ready, not dedicated enough, or for whatever reason, to then beginning to get educated, beginning to get experiences, beginning to, get mentors and people, getting to network and know people who were doing and were at where I wanted to be at, what I wanted to do. And so I had a real life example. And so, that to start us off, I would say that, it was coming to the end of myself and saying, no, I'm called to more. I can be more. I can do more. And so no more mediocrity, no more being comfortable in a comfort zone. As you said, nothing grows in the comfort zone. And so it was time to stretch myself, time to work hard, obviously, time to push forward. And it's been a journey, a huge journey.
All right. Okay. So a couple of circlebacks there. One, you mentioned that you had to overcome trauma.
Mhm.
So what was the trauma you had to overcome?
Yeah, there was several, I would say, traumas, One
Okay.
being Puerto Rican, and I told you I grew up in New York. So back in the day, we would say ni de aquí, ni de allá. I'm not from here or there, right? And
Mhm.
in the US, I'm not necessarily, was not necessarily considered, full American, but in Puerto Rico, well, you're Puerto Rican, but you're from the US. So it was like, where do I fit? Where do I go? The other, I would say, trauma or hurdle to really coming to myself and my identity was um, that my parents weren't around. So my grandma did a phenomenal job. That was my first leadership example, right? A faith leader, a community leader. She really did everything, empowered us, gave us love. She gave me her faith, right? Not only in God, but to believe in yourself, even when others don't believe. But it always bothered me as a child, like, where's my mom? Where's my dad? And what did I do wrong? Was I not good enough? And so, I went through some counseling. I went through a growing pains of evolving, of becoming, and I obviously can't leave God out the equation. I'm not sure if your podcast is open to this type of talk, but definitely God has been a huge part of
We are
overcoming.
faith-based here, so don't
Okay.
hesitate to plug him in because usually he is the reason that people
Yes.
can elevate. Yes, go ahead. Mhm.
So in that case, then let me go even a step deeper and further. Like I hit a tremendous rock bottom when I got out of the Marine Corps. I was in the Marine Corps. It seems like a lifetime ago, right? And from 2003 to 2006, I was living like a zombie. Goalless, effortless, meaningless, all of the lists. And I was an alcoholic and, even a drug addict at that time.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until I told you earlier, I had an encounter. Well, that's the encounter piece, right, with God and the resurrection, so to say, of my faith that my grandma had taught me, but I had drifted from it. So
I love
all of
it.
those things, the
Glad I dug
intersection.
for it.
Yeah, the intersection of all of that,
Mhm.
came into play. And, I felt like I had a vision. I got the vision. The Spirit gave me the vision of this is where you can be. This is where you can go. This is an invitation, Peter. Are you willing to take it? And I think
Beautiful.
that's what, for our listeners today, there is an invitation for you. There is an invitation for you to be more, do more, become more. And we just have to say yes. And I did, and I don't regret it. It hasn't been easy. Let me just keep it real, right? It
Never
has
easy.
not been easy. No ha
Never
sido
easy.
fácil, pero
Wow.
we can.
I love it. I love it. I'm glad I dug for it. I'm glad I dug for it. So yeah, because I wanted to know what the traumas were and I wanted to know what your aha moments was, but you beat me to it. Because in
Mhm.
order for us to make a change, something has to happen. It's usually sickness, it's usually you have an encounter, you usually
Right.
hit rock bottom and you say to God, God, if you get me out of this, I'm gonna do this or whatever. There has to be some, like we say, there's some fire starter. That's the word
Mm.
I'm looking for. Some fire starter. So I'm glad that your encounter with the divine is
Yes.
what got you from failing to becoming having two doctorate degrees and now inspiring others. That is usually the path that God wants you to be on. If you people don't like the word God, the universe, we are
Mhm.
here to serve, and that's where He normally wants to take you to. So that is amazing. I do a walking meditation. I got it from, Tick Manhattan, I think that's his name. And he says you walk and you say thank you, thank you, thank you, and yes, 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 right?
Right.
So you said yes, and now
Yeah.
you're saying thank you.
Yes. And still yes and thank you, and learning
Yes.
how to say no as well, right? Because not to God, but to other things and other people. Not every opportunity is a
Yeah,
good one.
yeah,
So
yeah. Well, say no to anything that's taking you off your path, but you
right.
say yes to anything that's taking you on the journey.
That's right.
So, all right, so that's a beautiful start. Now, the other thing I love about your work is that your target audience are people of color, which is why you really wanted to get on my show because
Yeah.
that is my target audience. Mine is not just people of color, but minorities,
Right.
or people that are in the wilderness that
Yeah.
need some help and need some inspiration to do something better in their lives, to have a more fulfilled life. So that is basically who my target audience is, but everybody's welcome.
Right.
So, how do you help people of color specifically to maximize their life and leadership?
So first of all, I consider myself obviously a person of color, right? And so my own lived experiences of not only myself minoritizing myself, but external forces also, systemic inequities, etc., that we live through, has really motivated me to help people that I can empathize with. Now, let me say this quote, and it's known. The quote says, it's it's hard to put yourself in someone else's shoes when yours fit just fine. And so I have learned, because at one point my shoes were not good, and my shoes were, my path wasn't a good path. And so I try to be accessible to people who come from minoritized and marginalized communities. Like you said, it's not just people of color, but that is like my target, because in any business you have to have a target market, you have
Right,
to have
right.
a niche, right? And I just feel that I have a lot to give. And so through my experiences, through what I've overcome and what I've been able to achieve and the certain levels of success, it's translatable. But you just have to follow either some steps, you have to have some guidance, you have to have some coaching. And so that's what I try to help people, to help them rethink, right? To unlearn some things, to relearn some other things, to learn some things. And so in that process of discovery, of conversation, of who do you want to be, and not to be cliche, but like, what's your why? Why do you think you exist? What are you here to accomplish? I remember someone said that everyone comes with gifts and talents to the world, and
Yes.
yet the cemetery is the richest place on earth. And they asked, I think it was Miles Monroe, right, from the Bahamas,
Okay.
why is
I'm not
that?
sure who said it, but
Yeah,
I quote that several times that
yeah.
yeah, because you
And
die
so
with your talents, right? Never use them,
exactly.
right?
And so and so the cemetery is the richest place because people die without ever writing that book, creating that song, writing that poem, starting that business, whatever your dream is. And so this is the time. This is your opportunity, if you're listening to us, that it's your time to kick charge, to turbocharge, to maximize your life. Guess what? The world needs it. Everyone needs what you're carrying and who you are. And I can't do what you do, and so, but maybe you can't do what I do, and that's where together, as we grow and maximize, we can make this world a better place.
Yes, that's very true. Now, as you were talking about the fact that you were Puerto Rican in New York, and you didn't fit in. Now we're coming on the heels of, this interview will air after the election is over,
Okay.
but I you're from Puerto Rico, and right now the Puerto Ricans are very upset that the Trump campaign called their country garbage.
Right.
So somebody is here in the United States or even in Puerto Rico, and hearing that, and they're working already with an inferiority complex. What would you say to that person right now that is feeling that they're garbage?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I've already heard online so many different iterations of why, and making excuses for people, and Trump himself didn't say it and somebody else said it. And regardless, that is that candidate's event. And so obviously, he endorses that type of behavior. And I think that Puerto Rican first, obviously, because I'm Puerto Rican, but any culture, any group, that should not be in the mouth or in a campaign, a presidential campaign, okay? Whether it's Democratic or Republican.
Right,
These are people who we're supposed to be voting for to lead our country.
right.
And it's like, and you have that type of rhetoric at your rally? No. So I think it's totally unfit. Again, I'm not trying to, I have friends who are Republican, who are on both aisles, right? I'm an independent. But however, and I am going to vote, right? But that rhetoric is not welcome. And I would just tell, other Boricuas and people of color and those of us who have suffered this type of discrimination, violence, marginalization, that you are not garbage. You are created in the image and likeness of God. You
Good.
are amazing. You have gifts, talents. As a matter of fact, that's why some people are now fearful, because we are growing. We are the majority minority. You know, I was looking today, Myrna, at the Latino Hispanic buying power, and just to make sure that I give you the correct statistics, we we are Hispanic buying power, right? Rose from 213 billion in 1990 to 1.97 trillion in 2020,
Wow.
representing a growth rate of 7.5%. So in other words, we're working hard, we're contributing. I was in the Marine Corps, right? I'm a
Mhm.
proud American as
Yeah,
well. And
yeah.
so
You served
just
your country. Yes,
people are
right.
just out of
As a
touch.
Puerto Rican.
Come on.
Yes. I mean, as a Puerto Rican American, right. Mhm.
Exactly. And so people are there's a certain segment of our population that's out of touch and sync with reality, that we are a globalized society. We are intercultural, multicultural, intergenerational, fluid. We are growing, intersectional. And the world is not going back. And I'm not going back. And I would tell the listeners, don't go back. Be you,
Well,
be proud.
that's Camilla's motto. We're not going back. Right, right, right. But
Yeah.
well, thank you for that, Peter.
Let
Because
me let
that
me
was
let me
really what I wanted to bring across.
Mhm.
That we can go all the way back to what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said. Is that the character of a man is not based on his skin color, but what he does. And you were an example of a brown person that is contributing to the world, doing great things, two doctoral degrees, coaching, lecturing, and serving God and the community. And for someone to say that you are garbage just because you're Puerto Rican or Haitian, that's
Right.
another community that they have no respect for. And
Right.
black, let's just forget the black, because the guy also talk about all black people are like P. Diddy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what they're doing is attacking everybody that's non-white. And
Right.
it's a terrible thing. And I'm glad you said that our leaders should not be
Mhm.
like that.
No.
you know, and I don't want this to be a political statement,
Yeah.
but when you lead your home, right?
Mhm.
When you lead your company, when you lead your country, it should be because you have stellar character. You don't go around calling names and doing all these different things. So, yes,
Yeah.
right. We are made in the image of God, regardless of our color, right? Regardless of where we're from. And I hold that as, as truth, right? That's the truth, right? Nobody is garbage, right? So that's good. I just wanted to make a pin on that. All right. So now, how can people of color and women in general, which is are the most of our listeners are women, find their superpower and their superhero story to share with the world? Now, you are connected to Les Brown, and there's no better person in the world that knows how to create a story. I think he's like the top five. When you listen to him, he can share his story. And even though you hear it every single time he talks,
Right.
but his grandmother and being dyslexic and what happened, or, not his grandmother, his adopted mom, he's a storyteller. And in this day and age, whenever you are in the public eye, you have to share your story. If you go to my website, the first thing you're going to see is my story, because that is what people connect with. So how can we use our story as a superpower?
That's great. I think first of all, you have to know who you are, and that's what we were talking about earlier. You know, I was living below my potential. I was minimizing, I wasn't maximizing, right? And it's in that growth phase of knowing who you are, valuing yourself, and valuing what you bring to this world. And so even the pain points, even those points and moments of trauma, I have by God's grace been able to transition them into my superpower. So I lead from a place, of service, of knowing from a humility standpoint, vulnerable standpoint, transparency of knowing that, I'm standing because of, right, like I said, God's grace, and because of the call that's pulling me. And I think that people need to understand, get to know who you are, why you're here. If you don't know that, it's okay. Now's the time, and get to know really your gift sets, your talents. And like you said, Les Brown, I remember him saying this: nobody can do what you can do, how you do it, when you do it. You're right.
Right.
And
Right.
so, I mean, I was spoke at a Les Brown event in last month, September, here in Orlando, and it was awesome to see somebody at that age still, like you said, delivering high impact. And it's not unique to Les, though. It's your time, it's my time. We can be these voices. And so I think that, what is the problem, societal problem, that you see? What are your gifts and talents, maybe even your pain points, and where do those intersect? And I think that can be your niche. For me, in my case, obviously, like we've said, it was helping people of color to maximize their lives, because I had overcome, and I'm overcoming, and I'm becoming. And so I'm now empowering others to do the same.
Okay, that's great. So, how do you craft the story? I know that's what Les Brown teaches. So, give us a little tip. What do you put into the story to make it impactful?
Mm. Um, that's a great question. So let me just tell you a quick story. When I was in elementary school, right? On one particular day, my teacher came, and she was assigning numbers to all the students. And when she came to me, she said, "Peter, you are number 2." Now, immediately, something within me rejected that notion of being number 2. And I told her, I don't want to be number 2. I want to be number 1.
Good for
Now, I
you.
already told you and your listeners that, I grew up without my mom and dad. So it was almost as if that was a trigger when I heard that I was number 2. And I remember, obviously, she was an adult. She came from around her desk and came to my desk, and she was like hovering over me, and I'm like shrinking back, right? I'm shrinking back. And she says, "You are not number 2." Excuse me. She goes, "You are not number 1. You are number 2 because I said you're number 2." And I almost just like wanted the floor to open up and suck me down, right? But something within me, and I believe it was my grandma, her spirit, that was like, you know what, you need to stand, enough bullying. And I stood up and I told her, I am not number 2. I am number 1. And that story, I'm sure you can relate to it. Everybody has been marginalized, minoritized. Women who are listening, sometimes, you've gone through different discriminatory practices at work, sexism, etc. But you're not number 2. You are number 1. And that goes back to your other question, Myrna, of our superpower. Knowing who we are, what we're carrying is so important. And when you have that conviction, today, I know I'm number 1. I'm not saying I'm better than anybody. I'm number 1 because I'm the best Peter Rios I can be at this time, right? And hopefully, if we do this interview again next year at the same time, I'm going to be better, and you're going to be better. So you
Yeah.
are number 1. You're the number 1, Myrna Young. I'm the number 1 Peter Rios, and you have to believe that. And that's why I don't allow anybody to call me garbage.
That's great. That's a great story. You had me tuned in. And that is how a good story is crafted, right? You get people to want to know what you're going to say next. I love it. I love it. Right. So, all right. So that's how you craft the story. You make it interesting, you make it have a point, right? And you keep people in suspense. So that's great. And that a lot of times things that happen in our childhood or early adolescence is what fuels us, whether good or bad, when we
Mm,
become adults. So that event there of you standing up for yourself and saying that you are not number 2, right?
mhm.
Um, Stays with you and propels you into what you just said just now, that you're never a number 2. You're always a
Right.
number 1, because that's how you think about yourself. And how we think about ourselves is the most important thing. Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. So, um, uh, what are some actionable steps that listeners can take to maximize their lives? Because that's your work. How can we do it?
Yeah, I think some practical things, right? I immediately think of a few years ago, I made some practical decisions. Because my work is flexible, as you know, entrepreneurship, you have some flexibility. However, you still need structure. And you need a lot of discipline. And so I was going to bed at like any time, getting up at any time, kind of doing anything that would go towards my goals, my dreams. But I didn't have a systematic or structural, process, a strategy. And so I just got convicted. One day I'm like, I need to get to bed early so at least I can start getting up early and then centering myself. I believe that the spiritual practices of prayer, meditation, reflection, working out, making sure you're feeling good and healthy and your well-being is good and you're flourishing. I think you can serve yourself, your community, and humanity from a better place, right? And so I started to do that. I started to journal, weekly. I started to take my reading more seriously, start to write more, and so that works for me. I'm not saying that's what you or our listeners need to do, but what is going to help you to become or to move towards more who you want to be? And so sometimes we're like, yeah, I want to, promotion, but I don't have the time to go back to school. And it's like, well, what would it take for you to go back to school, right? What would it take for you to get that certificate, that degree, or finish your old degree that you started that's going to make you elevate you to a new role? And so, concrete steps would be, call the admissions, begin to see how many credits you have, see what is lacking, what type of schedule you're going to need, and then talk if you have a family, a partner. Hey, this is what we're thinking. How can we make it happen? Sometimes it's just the practicality, right? So obviously making a plan, having goals, all of those things are important. But the day to day, the discipline, it is so necessary. And it's like, how can I do the things that I don't feel like doing? Guess what, Myrna? I don't feel like writing every day. I don't feel like sometimes talking to anybody, but that's part of my job. That's part of, you know what I'm saying? And so you have to do it even when you don't feel like it. And I feel like that's something that a lot of times as people of color, we miss out on. Because, we have this famous saying, right? I'm not feeling that. You've heard that. I'm
Yeah,
just not
yeah.
feeling it. Well, guess what? You don't have to feel it.
You have
Just
to
do
do
it.
it. You have to do it. Right, right, right. Well, it's very interesting. I can always plug in something that I'm listening and learning because I'm always listening and I'm always learning. And right now, I am reading the book, The Compound Effect. And
Mm,
that book is changing my life because he said exactly the same thing that you just said. All you need to do is do one small thing and it has a compound effect. A lot of people think that you have to go to the big thing. He talked about a guy that just took 125 calories off of his diet. And in 2 years, you have to wait a while, but in two
right.
years, he lost 31 pounds.
That's great.
You know what I mean? Because it's a compounding effect,
Mm,
right? And
mhm.
I'm doing that, and I started to do these little compounding things myself. I'm
Yeah,
always disciplined. I mentioned to you, I work out 6 days a week.
right.
But, if I were to add a little bit more, I started doing an extra 1,000 steps in my walk because he said the compounding effects of doing that is where it's going to take you. You know what I mean? So yes, what you're saying is when someone don't feel like doing it, but you just do a small little thing. You know what I mean? He talked about when he wanted to get off of coffee. He didn't just quit cold turkey. He
Yeah,
started, with decaffeinated, then he went to decaffeinated teas, then he went to, you know what I mean? So you went down little steps at a time. And
right.
and that's basically how you maximize your life.
Yes.
There's a quote that I love. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. So, so yes, you start with the small little steps, and sooner or later, the compounding effect of those small steps will definitely maximize your life.
That's right.
Awesome. I love
It's
it.
compound
Okay.
adding of the small wins that eventually will get you one of those bigger wins that you want. But the
Yes.
bigger win rarely comes without those smaller wins
Yes.
smaller, meeting those smaller goals and milestones, you know? So it's the same thing with writing a book. And I'll just say this really quick. I'm sure somebody listening to us wants to write a book. They have a book within them. You know, you can't worry about the whole book. You have to just do it in pieces. Do it with the ideas, the concepts. You know, you build chapters, and then at the end, it's like a movie. You can then put the introduction and the conclusion. You know, sometimes when they create movies, they do the end because
Yes.
the
And then they
actors,
go back,
whoever
right?
is available, you know, so they do that
Mhm.
scene first. Just write where you're at. Begin to do where you're at. Begin to have those small wins, and you will, like Myrna said, that compound effect. Yes, so important.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting. We're talking about stories, but there's a guy at church that says, "I'm going to write a book because I want to be on your show." And every time I see him, he says, "I even got the title from what from from the projects to whatever, something about selling drugs to wherever he was or the projects." But he's almost like your story, from
Uh-huh.
where he was to where he is now, right? So
Yeah.
last Sunday, he said to me, Myrna, I need a ghostwriter. I don't have time to write my book. And I do a publicity summit, a couple of times a year. And one of the anchors of a TV station, she's also a New York Times bestselling author. And she was sharing that she writes 5 minutes at a time in her Apple notepad. That's how she writes because she never has the time to sit down, yeah, I love Dr. Wayne Dwyer, and he would tell you he would get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and write, or go away and for 3 months and just write. But she said she doesn't have time to do that. So she
Mhm.
writes 5 minutes at a time, right? So I told him that. I says, hey, when you stop, whenever, he's a realtor too. So when you're showing a house or something, just write. So, but
Yep.
you're right. Those little pieces can turn into something really big.
Yep.
So that was a great plug for, again, taking the small steps, doing small little things, and getting it done. All right, two things I want to talk about before we end. Your book, you have a book that's called How to Maximize Your Life. Like, why did you write it? And what do you want people to walk away with after reading?
Yeah, so maximize 12 keys to unlocking your greatest potential comes out of its birth in August of 2021. I'm waiting in the car, you know, for my spouse who's in an appointment because we're about to move to Barbados. As I mentioned earlier, my wife Ruby's in medical school, so we went to Barbados first to the university there. And but while I'm waiting for in the car and I'm drinking the coffee, I get this download, you know, because I was reflecting, how does a person like me, and as you mentioned briefly, you know, who grew up in the projects, who grew up in some level of poverty, now, you know, I had a contract at that time to do some consulting at Harvard University, and I
Wow.
thought, how did this happen, you know, and so
Wow.
it was interesting. In my phone, I started to write, and I had a title, and then I wrote like, how did I get here? I thought mentors, you know, etc. So I put those bullet points and I began to put ideas in each. I didn't know it was going to be a book. I thought, you know, maybe this will be a YouTube video or a short or just a post.
Mhm.
But a year later, I'm flying back from back and forth St. Martin to Berkeley because I was teaching over there. And I heard a voice and say, you know, what about that note in your phone? And I thought, the note. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And then I thought, this is a book. This is a book. So guess what? I
Mhm.
started writing everywhere. Like, so maybe your friend who can hear this podcast and begin to, you know, get encouraged to write.
Yeah,
I started
yeah.
writing in the car. I started writing in the airplanes, at doctor's appointments. I started writing when I didn't feel like it, when I was sick. You know what? Then I learned this pretty cool application, this tool on Word where you can speak to your laptop and it writes for you. And I thought, you
I actually,
kidding?
I actually give him that because I have that. I give him the app, and it's called, one that
Yeah.
I use is called Otter, Otter. And I give
Hey,
him that because I told him that he can do that too. Yeah, go ahead.
you know? So I started to use that. Obviously, that had to be edited. I had to clean it, but
Mhm.
nothing was going to stop me. And in 1 year, I published the book, and it was important for me to publish the book not only in English but Spanish. You know, and like I said, I want to help Black and Brown folks, everybody, but that is my initial target of how they can maximize their life. So if you know, the book is available, it's on Amazon, and it's an empowering piece. It gives you steps on how you can become better, how you can learn, how you can grow, right? The more we learn, the more we earn. So you have to remember that. Sometimes we don't get that. We're like, well, I don't have time to read a book. Or, well, then guess what? You don't have time to get promoted and you don't have time to make more money and you don't have time to have more impact because you have to grow, you know? And so, so the book is touching those points and through real life stories, through some research, through practice. And I believe it would encourage everybody listening to us to maximize their lives.
Yeah, I love that. That is great. Awesome. I'm going to pick up a copy myself because I'm sure, again, I'm a learner. I learn from people that I talk to, I learn from the books I read. There is one of the things that the compound effect says is that if you put inspirational stuff in your mind, then you will grow and there'll be a huge difference, right? And I've been doing that when I walk, I'm listening to books, I read at night. So I'm taking webinars and I'm learning. I'm a learner. So I would love to learn your steps and strategies as well to maximize my life. So that's amazing. Awesome. Make sure you send me the link to that because actually I don't have it in your bio,
Okay.
so that I can share it. And finally, Dr. Rios, tell us about your company, Peter Rios Consulting. What programs do you offer, and how can our listeners connect with you?
Yeah, it's great. Thank you. You can connect with me, obviously in social media at Dr. Peter Rios, one word, Dr. Peter Rios. Also our website, peterriosconsulting.com. At the moment, we are leveraging our consulting and coaching capacities and also doing a lot of organizational training. And we focus in three areas: leadership development, anything to deal with leadership, diversity, so anything dealing with inclusion, belonging, and then change, the change piece, which we include innovation. So those three buckets are the areas. If you go to my website, there's some cool free resources, some ebooks. There's also a couple of chapters you can download from my current book, Maximize. And on our website, you'll also see that we just launched the Maximize Your Life online course. It's very affordable, again, providing access to everyone. I think it's like $198. I mean, that is almost giving it away considering the amount of time and the involvement that it took to create videos and in the course there's what we call MAP, Master Action Plan. So and
Mhm.
throughout every module, you're putting into practice what you're learning. So you are gonna grow. It's a compound, like you said, it's compounding. And at the end of 12 weeks or however long you take to build the course, you will be better than when you first came. So we're building it now in Spanish and just really busy, trying to help people and also trying to figure out what's our next step. What's my next step? What which is always, good work. And so those are some of the programs.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, Dr. Rios, you do good work. I am glad that you're helping our community. I'm glad that you got the tag from God to make this your mission, because a lot of people need help. And again, I've heard people say that, and it's very true that if you can't afford a coaching program, Dr. Rios' own is only $200, but some people's coaching program are $5,000, $10,000. But they have a book, and the book is $20 or something, right? So you can start there, right? But do something, learn something, grow, right? And
Right.
it's
That's right.
amazing. Even podcasts, this is
That's
free,
right.
right? But get something in your mind and or in your head, and you will see a change, little
Yeah.
changes, and then you will grow. And when you grow, everything grows, right?
Right.
Your relationships, your work, your money, your income,
Mm.
everything grows. So it's amazing.
I
So
like what you said earlier about the positivity, the motivational, what you're hearing, and like we are or we become what we think about. And
yes.
so if you set your mind on, unhealthy things, whatever that may be, you're going to be unhealthy. And I'm not here to minimize. There's some lived realities that we need to check, systemic inequities, all of that. But on a daily basis, I try to make it, I put an emphasis on listening to motivational material, reading instructional pieces, books from people who are at another place that I am not yet. And
Yeah.
so, that's what Maximize is all about. Actually, if you go to the course, you will get a free e-copy of the book. So there you go. It's really then, 180. Like,
Right.
I mean, and honestly, it's just again being giving access because as I was coming up, sometimes there was a lot of exclusion. And so I want to be
Of
inclusive.
course. Yes, of course. That's what, the Black and brown people face every day, a lot of exclusions and things like that. So that is beautiful. Awesome. Well, Peter, this has been an excellent interview. Thank you for being on the show. I will have a summary of my conversation with Dr. Rios on the show page, which is myhelps.us. We'll link out to his book. We'll link out to his website, and also link out to his social media, so that you can follow him, pick up a copy of his book, get his course, and definitely maximize your life. So I thank you guys for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life. I love to bring you quality guests like Dr. Rios that helps you to maximize your life. No better tagline than that to maximize your life. So as we wrap up, Peter, any last words?
No, I just, thank you so much for having me. I believe that the work you're doing is also transformative and you're making a huge difference. I scanned the YouTube page of the podcast. You've had amazing guests, amazing topics. So yes, please tune in and make sure you hear those. I would just say as from end where we started, you may find yourself today in a difficult situation or that you can't see a better tomorrow or, things are just really tough right now. Well, that is the reality and that's okay, but it can get better. It can little by little, and so you may need to get some help. You may need to pivot or rethink who you are, where you're going. But know this, that you have an opportunity to maximize your life and we're waiting on you because we know that when you become your best you, this place we call the world will be much better. And so we're excited and we'll see you there.
Yes, I love it. See you on the other side. Yes, when you have maximized your life. Yes, that's what we do here. That's what I do here. That is the purpose. Now we've got a tagline for it, right? Transform your life, maximize your life, live your best life now. All those bumper stickers. That's what we're trying to do here. So thank you guys for tuning in. If you love this episode, if you love what I do, go ahead and review the show. Say what you like about it. It helps the propel it to a newer audience. And also subscribe. All right. So thanks again for tuning in. Thank you, Dr. Rios, for being on the show. I love our content. Until next time, namaste.